So I want to talk to you about the Marines. I mean, obviously I want to get into your story too, but as I said when we first met, Marines and the OCS, like I had a whole life plan. And then for a few reasons, partly the book that I just mentioned totally steered me away. And it's not a regret, as I said, but like it is something I still think about all the time. It's like honestly an experience I wish I had.
Yeah.
You know, I had other good experiences in my early 20s, but like it has been, you know, something I do think about. I have dreams about the Marines still, even though, you know, I have 12 weeks of, you know, I did OCS. That's it.
So you did the juniors and the seniors, or how did you do it? Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When were you in OCS?
Oh, I think, I kind of forget the years, but it was like 2005, I think I did juniors, maybe.
And then
the seniors, a couple years after that, not like the first year, but like 2 years maybe after that.
So you might have been in seniors when I was in juniors at the same time. I mean, it's possible. 07. Yeah. Actually, I mean, maybe you know about this. I mean, I don't exactly know, but do you remember who the battalion commander was in OCS when you were there? Colonel Chase?
Colonel Chase, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so Colonel Chase was the guy when I was in juniors, and he was all about sleep deprivation, and he would basically say, like, we sleep deprive you to increase your fear so you can handle fear. Like, that was his MO, right? I don't know what happened in between, but when I came back for just seniors in 09, they gave us nap time. Because there's...
Oh, really?
I don't know exactly. I think something probably some report came out about how bad sleep deprivation was for, like... I think for future PTSD, like it just put you in like a high, I think it put you in a high stress thing. So like they didn't sleep deprive us, sleep deprive.
Yeah,
they didn't sleep deprive us in 09. They actually gave us nap time before the long humps.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy because you could see like the sergeant instructors were really upset about it. It's like, we have to give you some friggin', you know, we had to nap for 2 hours before the 18-mile.
That's crazy.
Hump. Yeah, it was crazy. It's a totally different world. Seniors was so much easier for me than juniors because of that change.
Dude, for me, like juniors was easy. Like seniors was like, it was very, very, very challenging. Yeah.
Because I was also so soft going into juniors, like because my OSO made it sound like that's like kind of your officer recruiter. For those who don't know, he made OCS sound like a sports camp. He's like, oh yeah, you get up early, you work out. I was like, oh, I could do that. You know, I've played sports my whole life. I honestly was such a I was so soft that like just having people yell at me, I was like, I can't believe this is a thing. Like I was like, man, like please let me out of here. But anyway, it was a good experience.
No, it's a whole different world till you go into it. So I did boot camp before because I enlisted first.
In Paris Island or the depot?
The depot.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was in like, San Diego and California.
But you're from Nebraska, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that side goes to the West Coast. Okay.
So, I mean, I already had a lot of experience with boot camp, and then juniors was not that hard. I'm like, okay. I mean, it was still very competitive, but seniors, it just hit me. Like, I mean, there's lots that went into that story. But seniors was very challenging.
What was it about seniors that was harder?
Well, I think, so like in juniors, I remember for me that like the first week they started, like it was really intense. They kind of started letting off. And there was never that let off. In seniors, and I think it depends on the year and who's in charge and everything else, and like the numbers they need. So I remember in seniors, like everyone was super impressive. Like everyone was there, like college athletes, super qualified, and like they would still cut like 25%.
Were you in a company of mostly prior enlisted, or was it kind of like a third?
I'd say it's probably like a good mix. I'd say a lot of them were prior enlisted.
Okay. Yeah. Somehow I felt seniors was easier for me, but I think it's because they made some changes on making the training.
I mean, it's interesting knowing Colonel Chase because I think about him sometimes.
Really?
Like what an inspirational, powerful person. You know, just that kind of like leader you never really meet in the real world. This kind of presence that can lead men into hell. You know.
Yeah, he had like a like a General Patton kind of vibe.
Yeah. No, and the sleep deprivation. I remember seniors. I was like 3 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
And I remember people would fall asleep at attention. People would fall asleep in marches. I mean, seniors was so crazy for me. I woke up at attention next to my bed at home a month afterwards.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Even after because you're already in the Marines for 5 years by then or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. Because I didn't go to Paris Island, so I don't know what boot camp is like, but the priors in my platoon, a lot of them said that OCS was harder because of the sleep deprivation, and then you also don't have to make decisions in boot camp, they said. You just have to do the stuff. Whereas like in OCS, you have to think.
No, I think, there's definitely a difference in that. So in OCS, they want you to make decisions, and everything's like centered on you. So right in the beginning of OCS, you're in those big classroom type settings, and I was really like arrogant, and I'm prior enlisted, and I got this. And juniors was fine.
And you were a veteran already.
A veteran, yeah. So I remember like, casually looking back and seeing like my lieutenant for the platoon, and I just casually look forward, like not in fear, just okay.
You mean like the candidate lieutenant, or like the
lieutenant?
Okay,
lieutenant, yeah. And he goes, "I saw that, Jensen. Like you are done. And he just went for me the whole 6 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I always felt like the officers were kind of chill. Like it wasn't their job to like chew you out so much.
Not this year, not this time.
Okay. I guess it depends on who you get.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah.
So I was put in every possible leadership position to test me, like every possible one. And I think at one point I was like I was the company commander, candidate company commander. And like everything was like on my shoulders, how everything did. And I remember going to the marches, I would like run up to the front during, you run through the forest. You know?
Yeah.
I'd run up to the front to report something, run to the back. We're marching really fast anyway. I'm running back and forth the whole time. That's just one thing.
Yeah. I remember because like I was probably one of the smallest guys like physically smallest in the company. But running's very easy for me.
Yeah.
And humping was so hard for me. But I could see the big guys like you as the opposite. Like humping was super easy because you're carrying like a fifth of your weight. I'm carrying a third of my weight. Yeah. But there's like a lot of big guys became heat casualties at OCS. I went in the summer. I don't know if you did.
Yeah. No, I did in summer.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, I always loved humping. That was like my thing.
I hated it so much. Like my ankles would always be super swollen, and I'd fall many times.
Plus, being in the front was so different because like in the back, it trails off. Then you run ahead.
They put us in height order.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. So you went into the Marines right out of high school, right?
Yeah.
And you were 0311 infantry, correct?
No, I was a heavy equipment operator at first.
Oh, okay.
Because I was like the unit around as a maintenance company, so I was a heavy equipment operator. And it wasn't until I deployed I was in infantry.
Okay. And is that just because they needed more infantry? Is that?
Well, actually, so what happened was there's a lot of things that added up. So I was always planning to commission as an officer, but I had this legal situation. Basically, a cop beat me up, and so my commission was kind of in flux when this legal situation was happening. And there was an airborne infantry unit in the National Guard deploying, so I wanted to deploy with them to get deployment under my belt.
Gotcha.
Come back and get the commission.
So the legal issue didn't affect your military service, but you couldn't be an officer with a record? Is that?
Well, yeah, so I was fine enlisted, but I was in the officer program. And it was this crazy story. Like, so this.
Yeah, can you tell us? Like,
yeah. No, so yeah, so I was, you have all different types of Marines, and I was living in this place in Omaha, Nebraska, where it's a beautiful area. It's called Dundee, and it's a trendy area, but it's really old. So all these houses are like 100 years old, but it's kind of like art stores and bars, everything within like 2 blocks of my house. So I just walked down there and walked back, and all my friends knew where I was. They just meet me down there, and I had this neighbor who's a cop, and he's like not the nice cop type, and he just had a chip on his shoulder, and he would get in his uniform off duty, just be on some kind of power trip, and
just sit on his porch and his.
No, he would go to the same area where all the businesses were at, and just kind of stand there in his uniform. And for example, like a couple of my friends were messing around the gas station, and like one of my friends like puts a cigarette wrapper down the other guy's shirt, and a cop like grabs him by the throat, throws him against the glass, and says like, "Don't do that anymore," or something like that. So very intense person. So yeah, so I had this one Marine Corps friend, and he's like we call him the scientist. So he's actually is a forensic scientist now, but he just wanted to be a Marine, that kind of guy that just wanted to do it, but doesn't look like the type. So everyone would always mess with him at bars. And
he was like really skinny.
Yeah, really skinny.
Looking.
Yeah, small, kind of nerdy looking. And he had this attitude like, "Don't mess with me." And no one, so of course, people would mess with him because he's so small. And people wouldn't usually realize there's like a group of Marines around him, you know? So I got to so someone would push him or something, and all of a sudden a fight would break out, and these guys have no idea what's coming down on him. So the same thing happened, and I shoulder checked this guy in the bar, and the bartender sees it and goes, "Hey, Luke, you gotta go." He knew me. My friend's like, "Okay, yeah, fair enough." And I walk out to the front of the bar, and I'm walking back to my house, and this cop's standing there, my neighbor. And this cop never says anything to me, but I had a girl roommate at the time, and he'd always see things to her about me. And so this was my mistake. I stop and I talk to him, like, "Hey, if you got an issue with me, you can talk to me about it, not her." And as I'm saying that, that guy I shoulder check at the bar was standing outside. He comes to the cop and goes, "This man assaulted me." And I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be a problem." And the cop interviewed all of his friends and my friends. They took me in front of the gas station. We're still outside. The bars aren't closed yet, so everyone's still outside. And this guy's yelling at me like a crazy, angry neighbor. And he never says any of those phrases like, "You're under arrest" or "detained." I know he's off duty too. So then I'm like, well, okay, I'm going to my house. And as I started walking away, he grabs me by the arm. I look back at him, and he stops like he knew to do something wrong. So I keep walking, and I think something like snapped. So all of a sudden, next thing I know, he's on my back. And he tells me to put my arms out, And at this point, you sober up really quick. I wasn't that drunk, but like everything became really clear. Like, okay, don't do anything. Just be very controlled. Be very peaceful. And he gets on his radio as he's on my back. He goes, "Stop resisting arrest." I'm like, "What?" And then he starts hitting me in the back of my head with his elbow. My head's slamming the concrete, and his blood's pouring out. And I don't really feel any pain because probably my adrenaline's going. And all of a sudden I hear cop cars coming, I hear the helicopter coming. And I think that all these people are going to see this event and, understand that I didn't do anything. Interview him, interview me. I'm much bigger than this cop. Obviously I wasn't resisting him. And when the cops all arrived, they were all really quiet, like they knew what happened, but didn't say anything. This is all me looking back. At the time, I just figured justice would be done. This is how things work in America. And so anyone that knows me just would know this ridiculous story. But he wrote, like I said, like, "Fuck you, pig," and like ran away, and he tackled me. And so I was charged with resisting arrest, disturbing the peace, and assaulting a police officer.
Wow.
And I didn't do anything. So all my friends went to college preparatory school with me, so they're all doing good things. So I'm in the process of like, "Hey guys, just really quick, get your resume and write a little report of what you see," because I got to talk to the military. I talked to OCS about this before they hear about it. And that was actually probably one of my mistakes. So he actually somehow called them up, and they dropped me from the program for behavior unbecoming of an officer.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Huh. And then you still had legal issues afterwards, or that was it?
Well, I called the OSO, the captain, and I eventually talked to him. I'm like, "Well, hey, let this go to court. This is this one guy's word." And after an hour talking to him, I convinced him. And he's like, "Okay, yeah, I'll do that." He goes, "Wait, I just passed that battalion. I can't do anything." And for me, it was just...
He just passed the battalion?
He passed up the report to battalion.
Oh, okay.
So he couldn't have any... He was no longer in charge of it.
Yeah.
So he passed it up to next chain of command. And when something like this happens, it was really traumatic. It was like being raped.
Yeah.
So so for me, I wasn't always I didn't probably do all the things I needed to do to defend myself legally.
Yeah.
Because part of it's you feel guilty. Man, I shouldn't put myself in this situation, Even though looking back, I didn't really do anything wrong, but at the time, well, if I didn't have those drinks, if I was at the bar,
Yeah.
And you question yourself, and there's this freeze response. So it just so happened, and I should have pursued it more from there. I actually, a retired colonel later talked to me. He was like, "Look, you just talked to me about it, and I could have handled that. I know generals, But I was so traumatized for it. I didn't really do anything. But this old recruiter recruited me to the Marines. He switched to the National Guard because his son wanted to stay in the same high school. He goes, Luke, there's this airborne infantry unit going. It's a LURS unit, so it's like recon, basically, like at a battalion level. It's going to Afghanistan. Let's get this deployment under your belt. Come back, and we'll get you back in.
Wait, so you served with an Army unit?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
But that's why you couldn't accept your commission after OCS?
No, I mean, so at the time, like, there's no commission. Like, it was taken from me.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, like, so I was kicked out of the program. So my idea is to, like, deploy with this unit, handle the legal problems while I was deployed, and then come back and reapply for that spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how did your military career end?
Well, so there's lots of things that go into deployment, but so I was planning to come back and commission or try to, and I became really jaded after the deployment of like the war, its mission, and there's certain situations where like I never wanted to be in a position where my life was put on the line because of incompetence, basically. And it wasn't the Marines, it was National Guard, but I felt that, this is so overwhelming that my life was being put on the line, like I said, for someone that just made a bad decision or couldn't see an obvious situation that was dangerous. So for me, I'm like, I made a commitment to myself to never to do that again. So after my deployment, I got out. After I got out, like it was kind of like this was it. This was my goal. This was my mission. Like everything was geared for this life, like a career, and you just lose it. And it was kind of like lost in my path after that.
Was it like that the officers you reported to were just incompetent, or was it the whole setup? And I mean, obviously we know how it ended. It didn't end very well.
I mean, the way it ended, like we would, at the time, I would like everyone in Kabul would send reports to their chain command. And so Kabul is the most westernized city, and I knew everyone there. They're all saying the same thing. We can't train these people. We're making no progress. Like they're not, nothing's happening. And the generals are going in front of Congress and so we're making great progress. The army will be ready any day now. So 10 years after that, the whole thing collapsed within like weeks or a month. But I saw it back then, and anyone intelligent could see that back then.
And what was it? Is that they didn't actually they were just kind of appeasing the American occupiers? Like they didn't actually want them there, or what? Or they're still loyal to the Taliban, or what?
There's so much to it. So we don't think of like, it's in no way like a country like we imagine a country, right? In some ways I'd say like you're in Mars or something, because Afghanistan's a series of tribes, Tajik, Pashtun. And when those tribes get in power, like that tribe's in charge. We don't have this idea of democracy or voting or like, they never had enlightenment or Renaissance or any of these kind of ideas where like there's like one people, one Afghanistan, we're all in this together. Like they'll say like we're in power and we'll do what we need to do to like hold on to that or take it out on anyone else. So there's no idea of like national unity. And corruption was just so part of the culture. It wasn't even like corruption. Like we would be in situations where like they're supposed to be searching vehicles for weapons for the Taliban. Instead, they would just take money from the local population to get by that checkpoint. And we would say like, hey, you can't do that. That's corruption. And like, well, how are we supposed to make money? This is it's always been done. Like, do you understand?
Yeah.
And I remember like this old woman comes up to me, or not that old, but she goes, her son has been arrested by a local police chief because her husband's rich, and they want $10,000 just to release him. And just things like this. Like, so the government we're supporting was corrupt. Like, we were pretty sure that our police station was running drugs and prostitutes and who knows what else. And the cultural barrier, we couldn't really figure it out, because every time we started figuring something out, that group would leave Afghanistan, a new group would come in every 9 months. So it basically takes 9 months to actually kind of understand a little bit of the culture in the country.
Yeah.
And all your interpreters, who are they really loyal to? Like they know Americans are eventually leaving. So they're gonna back you up, looking into whatever corruption's going on, or they're gonna back up the police, the army that are doing the corrupt stuff.
Right.
They have families. They,
Yeah. Because from what I've seen from whatever media that may or may not be accurate, it does seem like a lot of the Afghans who are really supportive of the U.S. were in deep shit once they left.
Well, they knew that. I mean, all these things happen to me. You really kind of lose your idealism sometimes. At least I did. I remember one of our interpreters has been serving with Americans for like 7 years. And he took an IED, and he has a plate in his head, an IED. And he was applying to come to the United States on a visa, and he got denied. I remember him walking out. He goes, "I'm dead. The top has to cut my fucking head off, like when you guys leave." And I look at this situation where this guy has put his life on the line for our mission, for what the country's doing over there, and he gets denied. And he has a plate in his head from the IED. Who knows? I mean, it shows you like our priorities, our loyalty.
Yeah. Do you know if he's still alive?
I don't know. I kind of wonder about it because, like, I wonder about my interpreters we had and people I made friends with over there. I wonder what happened to them.
Yeah. Damn. Yeah, it's like, I guess it's reminding me of this book, Imagine Communities by Benedict Anderson. It's about nationalism. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay. It's about how the idea of nationalism, we kind of assume that the idea of the nation state is ubiquitous and has always been, but up until the 1500s, it wasn't even a concept.
Yeah, it was the Treaty of Westphalia, right? Like,
I think that, that's one, but it's like, up until like kind of recently in history, people didn't think of themselves as English or French. It's like they pledged allegiance to a lord or a king or a person, and like a person in London may have no connection or identity in common with someone from Manchester, even though their map says they're both part of the UK or whatever. Like, that's a totally new idea. And one of the things that changed that was the printing press, because once you have everyone of a certain area reading the same news, then they feel like, oh, we're the same audience to the same theater, and now we feel like we're the same group. I mean, there's other factors, but the newspaper was the biggest thing. Before the newspaper, it was impossible for two people in different areas to identify with the same information because they weren't getting. And I'm guessing for the the tribal setup in Afghanistan. Why would two people from different tribes feel like they were both Afghans?
Yeah,
because it's a complete fiction ultimately.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. I've never heard of that. That makes a lot of sense. I always talk about kind of like the invention of the TV is one of the worst things that happened in the United States because it put everything on the national level. You're paying attention to President Alexa, but traditionally in the United States, you pay attention to the local level, and that's the only thing you really have an impact on anyway.
Yeah,
but
the irony though is with social media and like different media being shown to the same people even next door to each other. Now we have a similar kind of divide. It's not geographic though. Yeah. But like, liberals and conservatives have completely different information.
Worldviews
and which in some ways is natural. Actually, I just did an episode on this. I recorded it yesterday. I don't know if you saw, there was a couple articles on how men are becoming more conservative, women are becoming more liberal, and it's causing like issues in dating. Like Gen Zers don't want to date each other because they have. But I actually think it's normal. I think it's super natural for a neurotypical masculine man to have more conservative views, and a typical feminine woman to have like more egalitarian liberal. Like, I think that's actually a return to nature. It's just trying to figure out how we can coexist or appreciate the opposite polarity without like trying to force everyone to see the same thing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, I also read that like married women and single women are different in how they're political.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on a deep rant on that, but it's like but it's like if you are a single middle-aged woman who probably has relationship trauma from all the men who treated you like crap, it kind of makes sense you'd be a militant feminist who like hated conservatives and everything. But if you're happily married, of course you are happy with the traditional gender roles.
Well, also there's the female and male need for resources is different, right? So like I think it's just natural where like so they don't have a partner, so the state can fill that role in many ways. Yeah,
state becomes daddy.
Yeah, protector, and all these different things.
And then you see, I mean, G.K. Chesterton, a conservative writer from a long, 100 years. He was writing right when women's suffrage was becoming a thing. Yeah. He's really funny. He's a funny writer, a British guy. He was saying that he was against women going into the workplace, which was the hot issue in like 1900 or something, because women who go into the workplace, and I'm not saying I agree with him, but this is his viewpoint. Women who go into the workplace end up treating their boss like their husband. Like they have this, it's like this natural inclination to like be there emotionally and like, be there for his ideas and want to see him succeed, like the way that a woman is like with a man when she's in love with him, which is why, and he was saying this before, I think office romances were a thing. It's like it's natural for a boss and a secretary to fall in love because you're creating a husband-wife dynamic with money involved.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So women actually get that outside the home instead of in the home.
Yeah, and he was saying like that's bad for marriages. And
no, it probably is. I mean, it's giving me a lot of insight right now.
I need a secretary. Anyway, back to your story. So you got out of. Oh, you're saying, oh yeah, Afghanistan.
No, just some examples. I mean, I had guard tower duty one day, and I started off guard tower duty. I saw a machine gun. There's a 240 Golf machine gun up there, and this guard tower is sheet metal. Like this space has been here for 10 years. It's downtown Kabul. It's like the first city we really took over. Minimum, you need like nets with sandbags, but you have steel plate. And it's not like Iraq where the base is in the middle of nowhere. Like this base is like downtown Kabul. There's a busy street like right in front of it, and we can pull over with the K-47s and just we go right through that.
Yeah.
And how does a colonel not walk by, or how does a general not walk by, and say something about that?
Yeah,
it never happened.
Huh? Because from what I've heard, a lot of, especially in Afghanistan, where from what I understand, not a lot of resources were sent. A lot of soldiers and Marines would have to pay for their own shit to keep them safe.
Well, I think this one thing about the difference between the Marines is the Marines have always been able to like do a lot in like a small budget. They figure things out, and I really appreciate that. So maybe there's a different in the branch and stuff like that.
Because I remember reading, the book One Bullet Away. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it.
It's about I think he was an officer for I think ground intel recon. I forget the exact. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, he tells his memoir of going through OCS, which is what made me read the book. I was in OCS at the time, and he was saying how even for their vehicles, they had to basically put plating on it themselves because they were just naked vehicles and they're supposed to go out into the fields.
No, I mean that's the thing is like the idea of taking initiative, and I think I think the Army it's almost like too bureaucratic. Like who's taking initiative here? And the Marines really emphasizes and pushing like responsibility to the lowest level possible, and like having those low levels take initiative. And unless you have that, and like that's really important to be functional, so you can like adapt to different situations. So I mean, another time, like we had intelligence. It was Muhammad's birthday. We had intelligence was being attacked that day,
like the prophets.
Yeah.
Birthday. Okay.
And so. To imagine it, like we're downtown Kabul, like I said, there's 2 walls at the gate that are 20 feet high and a guard tower like up to the right. These are just concrete walls and the gate's a steel bar you just press down. And then the intelligence that day is like, we're gonna have a vehicle-borne ID that comes around the corner and detonates. Guys with suicide vests are coming and detonate. And to be guys at AK-47s, stuff like that, firing, like support. Like, all right, go ahead and go out there. No, I'm at the gate. There's a wall on your side of me, like in a tunnel, basically. And I just have that steel bar to put down, let the Humvees out. There's no blast shield, there's no sandbags, there's no nothing. And I realized at that point, if that vehicle comes around and detonates, there's no firefight, there's no glorious death, which I didn't have a problem with,
Yeah.
It would just be boom, gone, pink mist, done.
Yeah.
And luckily the attack didn't happen that day. It did happen 2 weeks later. And somehow no one died. Because the vehicle-borne ID didn't happen because those things fly in a city block. The guys at suicide vest came in. They detonated too early. No one got killed. And I don't know how the guy in the car tower survived. The whole thing was like torn to hell. Then they put the Humvees with 50 cals in. Then they put the blast shield in. And so there's these situations. I'm like, I don't want to be part of it. And maybe it was just that time, that unit. But I was so against this whole thing, and then I saw, like I said, like my political views started changing at the time. I started becoming much more of like a Ron Paul libertarian, and then all of a sudden I'm here in the country. I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like Jeffersonian democracy is never going to work here. And of course, the whole thing fell apart 10 years later.
Yeah. Did you? Yeah, it's interesting because I actually in OCS I was in my platoon, I was one of 2 guys from blue states.
Okay.
It was me from New York and this guy from Portland. Half our platoon was from Texas, and the rest was from red states, right? As you would expect.
Yeah.
And both he and I mean, we didn't talk about politics too much, but like I was already, just because of my upbringing, I guess, like, you know, my friends' parents would take us to pull us out of school to protest the war when we were in middle school and stuff. And like, that was just what I grew up in. But I wanted to see combat. So I kind of decided I was going to ignore politics just to avoid the cognitive dissonance. Like, I wanted to go fight, but I didn't want, you know, but anyway, it was also one of the factors that made me change my mind. But it's interesting to hear kind of the change of heart.
Yeah, for me, it was different. So I was like Midwestern, Nebraska. They attacked us 9/11. You know, my patriotic duty as an American, a man, a citizen, is to, you know, we're going to take the war over there. And then I'd say that my views started changing in 2009. I started realizing, like, wait, there's way more going on than they tell us.
Yeah, I was the opposite, because like in OCS, that was the first time I had intelligent conversations with conservatives. Yeah. And I grew up, and it's still my friends that I grew up with, like, they think anyone who leans right on anything is an absolute idiot or an evil person. I'm like, that's not actually true. And like, you need someone protecting your border. Like, we have the luxury of talking about liberal politics in New York, you know, because other people are doing your dirty work for you, basically, whether it's good or not. I want to know, did you interact with the Taliban at any point? Like, did you meet anyone from the other side or anything?
Not that I know of, but they would say like 10% at least 10% of the Afghan army and police were Taliban. I remember situations where like someone come in, like one of their police or army, like with like kind of this weird behavior, you know. And there were situations where like guys with suicide vests, to be in a army uniform, police uniform, come in with a suicide vest and detonate and kill a bunch of guys. And that happened like not too long before before I got there, a few months before I got there, arrived. And in situations like that, I'll just like, hey, I would tell my interpreter, like, hey, go over there and check that guy out. He's acting weird, you know, see, make sure his ID and all that. But no, I actually never talked to the Taliban, I don't think. You know.
Yeah, I mean, what I really wanted to do was human intelligence. Like, I didn't know exactly what they did. I just thought it was like something with psychology, which I've always been into. It's like, if I could, you know, and I figured I'm brown, maybe they would want me to learn Farsi and like talk to warlords. Like, that's what I really wanted to do if I was deployed.
Well, we're different situations. I mean, who's Taliban, who's not? So we're like talking to like every village has their like their elder, and you know, and you're negotiating with them and stuff, and who they're aligned to is often hard to tell.
Yeah. I guess that would be the fun game of figuring that out. Yeah. Okay, so you were jaded when you came back from deployment. You had this legal issue. Then what happened?
So after the deployment, I never even tried to go back into the military.
Okay.
And it was just done. But it was this really crisis of self, like loss of identity. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do now? Like, everything is geared towards this.
Because you had been in for 8 years, something like that?
Yeah. No, I mean, I went to college. I was in reserves. But everything was, I mean, I was a history degree just because I'm really good at history, and I was just planning commission, you know. So like, I never want to like be a teacher or have like a normal job.
And you were like a staff sergeant by now, or
no? Like my it was kind of weird. So I lost rank when I went into the National Guard.
Oh,
yeah, which was like,
you went back to private.
I was like specialist.
Oh,
so I was a corporal. In the Marine Corps, I was a squad leader, so I had 12 Marines under me, which is like a serious position. And I was actually probably could have been like a platoon sergeant even. And just how ranking's different. They put me as a specialist because they're both E4s. And it was like I was in the bottom of the rung. You know, that was like traumatic because I think I had a lot of people over me that I did not like. I thought were incompetent. Not everyone, but you know, like some of these people were in charge of a lot of stuff, and you know, they probably couldn't have a normal job in the real world, but here they were, you know. Anyway, that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, so you were jaded, and I mean, maybe fast forward us to ayahuasca and brain mapping.
Yeah, so I came down to Peru not too long after my deployment. I tried ayahuasca. It was really life.
Oh yeah, and did you consider yourself as having PTSD?
I was like in pretty much denial about that. I never went to the VA. I still haven't gone to the VA. So I was never diagnosed with PTSD. And I was always kind of the person like with the best, you know, face forward. But I definitely had like PTSD symptoms.
Like what?
Well, I didn't even know what anxiety was before the military. I was never like an anxious person. was constant. I'm not even sure the right phrase for it. I feel like my nervous system was on fire constantly, and like it was just like this. I don't know how to like deal with it. So constantly, like, I couldn't even like bring that down. It was almost like torture. It was like, I feel like every day was very, very challenging after that.
Like you just like felt dysphoria from when you woke up to when you went to bed, or did you get triggered by things really quickly? Like what did it look like?
I mean, outside people didn't really know because I could handle it really well. Talked to my mom's a therapist. She goes like, Luke, you're going through like constant panic attacks. I didn't even know what that was. For me, it just felt like your body's in constant fight or flight, and almost like your nervous system's so overactive, like it starts degrading your like bodily functions. You know, and actually looking back on now that I know neurofeedback, it actually does. So like, yeah, I remember just. I mean, there's lots of feelings. Feeling extremely lost. Feeling like I don't know what my goal is in life. I mean, at the time, I wasn't ever afraid of dying necessarily. I want to die, like I said, because of incompetence. But I wasn't really afraid of dying. My fear was like not living, not living my goals, not living my dreams, not living like a life that I felt was worthwhile.
Yeah, because I think we briefly spoke about this before, but one of Colonel Grossman's theses around PTSD and why it's so much more common since Vietnam was that modern military training basically gets people to override their feeling of remorse from killing. And he said that's what causes modern PTSD. It's like you're supposed to feel bad when you kill someone, but modern military training has disabled that, and that's what causes PTSD. Does that ring true, or does that fit with your experience at all?
You know, for me, I've thought about it a lot because like I was in a situation where I had to kill anybody.
You were not?
No.
Okay.
And it seemed like all my friends have come back one way or another different, whether they're in combat, whether they're non-combat. It's still kind of mystery to me. Sometimes I think about, I know it's controversial, but the vaccines they give us. Because I was reading articles on the anthrax vaccine they give you when you deploy and the smallpox vaccine. Like they do have like heavy metals in them, and that's just a fact. Like they have, like, and maybe they say they aren't as bad as they used to be, but like all those things are designed to create an immune response. So if those things go in the brain, it'll create inflammation, they'll create situations. And maybe in the, you know, like it's not bad one by themselves, but all these things combined, and then like the stress from just being in the country all adds up.
Like
right?
just being in a war zone, where you could get blown up. And,
So for us, like we would constantly worry about like IEDs, you know, like, and you know, no matter how good you're looking for IEDs, you can still get hit by an IED.
Yeah,
there's no perfect way to defend against them, and there's this constant stresses there. So I think there might be multiple factors. I'm not really sure why. I mean, because I don't think we read about, at least as I understand, ancient civilizations didn't have the same problem with PTSD. I don't remember reading about it in Rome or the English Empire or things like this. For me, in my understanding, it seems to be more of a modern phenomenon. But that's just from my perspective.
Actually, it's reminded me too. I have a friend who is in the Royal Marines in the UK. Yeah, and you know, I don't know. He actually didn't want to share too much about his personal experience with me, but he was saying that he knew older guys in the Falklands War, and how there were basically two types of units that the UK sent to fight in that war. The commandos were dropped in and then immediately pulled out right after gunfire, and they were back in the UK in like 24 hours. But then I might be mixing this up. But then I believe the regular infantry troops were put on a boat, and it took them weeks to get back, and they all got shit-faced on the boat. And he was saying that, if I'm remembering correctly, the guys who had an opportunity to basically have like a decompression ritual and get wasted together before we reintegrate into society, they were mostly fine. Whereas the commandos who were dropped in, killed a bunch of people, and then were back in normal life 24 hours later were the ones who were really messed up.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think the book on killing talks about that. There's like these ways to process, and they talk about like drinking is one of them, whether it's alcoholic drink or not. It's like the motion of men around talking about things as a way to decompress. I think PTSD is a very interesting thing. I'm also a little cautious about labels with things. I mean, they have their purpose. At the same time, like, I really look at it as like a spiritual issue. So when someone kills somebody or they're in a war zone, like they're dealing with like spiritual issues, and we psychologize it so much and put a label on it. And everyone's experience is different, you know, even though there might be similarities and it might be beneficial in some ways to like call it PTSD. But I think also we lose something from that, because I don't think that our ancestors would ever call anything PTSD.
Right.
You know?
It's like they just have like the war demon in them too much, and it has to be like released or something.
Yeah, my one friend, she was saying that, I forget, I think she was talking about like a tribe somewhere, maybe Africa, but like when he came back from war, they all had to stay like a hut outside the village, go through all these cleansing rituals, you know, and we don't really have that because we don't approach these things in a spiritual way. We approach these in a very psychological way or a medicalized way. And like I said, there's all other purposes, but I think we're missing like the overall picture to what this is.
Yeah. It reminds me of like Jung's idea when he went to, I believe, the Amazon, and he studied the tribes there. He's like, you know, a Westerner with anxiety basically has the same symptoms as like you know, an indigenous person who believes they're possessed by a demon. But the Westerner goes to see a psychologist and talk about it for 10 years and nothing's happened. But the indigenous person sees a shaman who shakes a rattle and does some placebo, and he's cured. And he's like, yeah, he's good. He's like, oh, the demon's gone, great. And it's like, well, which one's more effective, even if it's not scientifically backed?
No, I think that's an amazing insight, and it's true. You know, so we medicalize this. We want to talk about things, and we want to get to the root of things. Also, when we psychologize stuff, it really puts all this emphasis on the person, right? Like, you had a child issue, or you went through this and this and this and this trauma, and you have to like overcome it. Or our ancestors look like you said, like a demon did this, the gods did this. You know, there's something in the air. You know, they wouldn't put all this pressure on themselves to like do this. Yeah, and I think that's probably a healthy way, because there's probably truth to it too. That all around us, there's powers working that we don't understand. Now, the Western mind thinks we understand. But what has this done for us? It's locked us into this really rigid view that's really unhealthy. Yeah.
And then when I do think, you know, with a lot, I don't know enough about PTSD, but with a lot of psychological labels, it's kind of, you know, it's like when a child is labeled as ADD, you know, or ADHD, and he has to take medication, and there's this affliction, and he's like, okay, I have to go through life because I'm neurodivergent. Yeah. As opposed to like, maybe I think in many cases the kid just needed more exercise, and he's just not the type of person that needs to sit in a chair when he's 5 years old all day, you know?
Well, no, I mean, this whole industrial, I mean, it really is an industrialized education system. It was this, I mean, it was explicitly designed to make workers, laborers.
Factory workers, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, they say like, we're not here to make philosophers. We're not here to like have people have ideas. Like this was designed for. In the 1890s, you can go into this. I forget the author's name. But he wrote one of the books that's called Weapons of Mass Education. And he wrote a number of books. He was like the teacher of the year of New York, and I forget his name. But he goes into this, like you look at, you know,
not Dewey.
I forget his name. I'm sure.
Anyway,
but it's very fascinating because he talks about also school infantizes people.
Infantilizes.
Yeah. So he can't like grow up. And he goes into the like American Revolution, and like Lafayette was like I think like 14 years old or something. And, like all these people like really really young, and they're like leading a revolution. And he can't even get a 30-year-old to like
it's crazy. And actually, I mean, I rant on this a lot, but like that people in their 30s would call certain life functions adulting. It's like you should be a grandparent at 30. You know, like you know. And and it's something I've been thinking a lot. Being a parent, it's like teenage angst seems like it's obviously because you're supposed to do adult things once you hit puberty, and then you're forced into a high school or something, and of course you're pissed off. You know. Yeah. Like you're supposed to be out making babies and going on adventures and stuff like that. Like that's what a 15-year-old young man is supposed to do.
No, it brings me this story. I was in college and I took the wrong class for English, and it was all foreigners. It was really, really cool, and the teachers let me like stay in there. And so one guy's from Africa. He goes, "Yeah, when I was 12, I moved out. I made my own hut." You know, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. You know, and like, he's his own man. He's his own hut. He's 12. And that's it.
Yeah, because every ancient rite of passage, it's like at puberty. I mean, you can make babies, then you could also carry a spear or build a hut or whatever.
And defend the tribe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Okay, so how did you get into brain mapping?
Okay, so I I went to Peru, had this really powerful ayahuasca experience, really changed my view on reality. And I kept going back and forth. I was in this position where I could at the time. I noticed that the experience would fade after 3 months or 6 months, and like I'd get in old thought patterns for like 3 months. I'd be feeling great. I'd get everything, and all those problems would have to be gone, and I'd feel really aligned. And then it would fade. And so my friend, she's from Nebraska, she did a brain map on me. Like, let's do a brain map. It was a rare technology at the time. It's still pretty rare now.
You could explain what it is exactly?
So what's called a QEEG brain map. It's a quantitative electronic encephalogram. So if you see like the raw brain waves in a hospital, that's an EEG. We do a Q, which is quantitative. And then it compares, so it looks like a swim cap. You put it on, there's 19 points, it reads all your brain waves. Your major brain waves are delta, theta, alpha, and beta. And when it reads those brain waves, how those brain waves appear in different areas of your brain tells us a lot about what's going on. So she took this brain map of me, and she saw I had this pattern, what she said. It's funny because those things happen, like your first brain map, and you remember it forever, kind of like an ayahuasca experience. She goes, you have a pattern for PTSD. That's what she told me. Related to anxiety, PTSD, insomnia.
And just so I understand, so she put this thing on you, and she's just reading, like you're not doing anything, right? Like you're not meditating, you're not talking, you're just reading.
Yeah, it's just you put it on, it takes like 20, 30 minutes, and they read your brain waves. And she goes, yeah, you have this. And she goes over it with me, you have this pattern for PTSD. So for me, I was never really into like medication anyway. I never want to go that route. And, also in the Marines, I'm like a tough guy, so I'm not going to go to talk therapy. I didn't really believe that either because of what I've read, like there's only so much success rate, but it was just not my deal anyway. But training your brain waves, so she said after the brain map, you can train it to become more regulated and train this pattern away so you can feel better. Like, oh, okay, sounds more like a video game or something like that, or peak performance type stuff. And also takes, for the time and for a lot of people, it takes that pressure off you, right? Like, oh, you have this psychological condition. Like you're talking about ADD. Like you have this. Like, no, you have this brain pattern. And here's how you regulate it. Here's how you heal it. So that was much more interesting to me.
And it's like showing in real time what your thoughts or your emotions are showing up in your brain.
Yeah. So like, for example, you have different patterns for different things. So someone with a high theta pattern might have trouble with focus and ADD. That's
like someone who's a dreamer.
Yeah,
or something?
yeah,
Okay.
and they're disassociating. Someone with high alpha pattern might have like a really busy mind called perseverance. They can't slow it down, and that's a way to avoid trauma. Someone might have a high beta pattern, which is anxiety. Some might have a low power pattern. All these different patterns mean different things, and we know this. It's very statistical, so we may have like ideas of why these patterns are related to different things. But it's also just like statistics. Like we know that people with this pattern tend to be depressed or anxious, and then we can like train those patterns away with the brain training and neurofeedback.
And it's like you train it in real time by seeing like, oh, I have an anxiety pattern. Can I calm that down?
Yeah.
Right? So
when I take the brain map, it's like a roadmap, or it gives me a base. So I take the brain map. Okay, like they're dysregulated here, here, and here. A healthy brain is over here. A good practitioner takes the fastest route, like choosing protocols and choosing strategies to like move that brain.
But is it happening in real time, or it's like you do the brain map? It's like, oh, you should probably meditate more, or you should have.
Well, no, with the brain map. So the brain map is one thing, and there's a neurofeedback training.
Oh, okay.
So the brain map itself, though, is so powerful. So some people just come for that. I'm like, okay, this kind of meditation would be good for you. This kind of diet would be good for you. The idea is to empower them. And but then if they want to do the brain training, it's like going to the gym. So I'm kind of like a personal trainer for the brain. So they come in like 3 days a week, and I just choose the best way to train them. But it's basically operant conditioning. So they just look at a screen. The screen gets lighter or darker. It rewards them when it's lighter, and this instead when it's darker. So your brain itself figures out its healthiest state. You just show it where to go. Yeah.
That's cool. I want to try it sometime.
Yeah, no, you should. I mean, it's really amazing. I mean, the more you're in this field, the more you're amazed by it because the power of the unconscious, the power of the mind is to heal itself. Is so interesting.
I did like a simplified have you heard of heart math?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've only done it a couple of times because I'm learning how to train horses for horse therapy.
Okay.
And when I was in Mexico, when I first started doing this, she put a heart math thing on me to basically to basically pin how I was behaving around the horse, because the horses can sense your feelings better than you can. But then to also look at like, oh, I'm actually not breathing. I didn't breathe for like a minute when the horse was like being crazy or something. And then it's just like, oh, it's like a visual thing of like, oh, I can make my whatever the line means more smooth by breathing or chilling out or, you know.
Yeah, and it really shows you the power of like your body, your thoughts, all those things are related. I love heart math or any heart rate variability because it really shows you like, wait, my thoughts are literally affecting my physiology.
Yeah.
And if I have healthier thoughts, they affect my physiology in a positive way. Or, you know, if I affect my physiology, breathing correctly and stuff like that, it can affect my thoughts. So this is very fascinating, this connection, and it demonstrates it very well. Heart math is really cool for that.
Yeah, and it takes away, because otherwise it's like so abstract and spiritual and you know.
Yeah. I look at biofeedback and neurofeedback as yoga, and it is. So what is yoga? It's a way to self-regulate. And for yogis, the body is the path through enlightenment. And it sounds weird from like a Christian perspective or Western perspective, but to go in the body, to understand it, to feel it, can you reach higher states of consciousness? So what yogis do with their practices and their training, we're doing the same thing with machines.
Have you done stuff with like have you put the QEEG on someone while doing yoga or something? I've heard of this with meditators. Like I've seen a lot of stuff, but like with something more active.
No, I haven't. I know other people have. So part of my inspiration, there's a person in the field called, his name was Elmer Green. He's one of the greats of the field. He went to India with all these machines and studied all these yogis. And it was very fascinating.
Was this a while ago? Because
it was like in the 70s.
But this technology is pretty new, isn't it?
Well,
or just this version.
The stuff we're using now is new, but the basic technology of like reading brainwaves has been around the 60s.
Okay.
So, but no one's really known about it. So, like he was actually the first one to invent biofeedback devices was Elmer Green. And now we have the heart math one, but he was developing the first ones in the 60s. And he also had machines to read brainwaves. You know, now we have more complex because of the databases, the quantitative, but he could do it at a basic level. And he went through India and studied these yogis, and he's kind of he is one of my inspirations. So for me, it's studying shamanism, basically.
Cool. Because actually it seems like I'd be curious just to have it on all day and see what's going on. Like if I lose my cool with my kid, can I see that before it happens, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. I should be actually interested to put one on while I'm working with horses and just see, because the horses are interesting because they give you some people don't realize like they're uptight or they're like, you know, kind of in a high cortisol state, but then the horses like all turn their back on him and I was like, oh, okay. And then you kind of realize, oh, I've been in a bad mood, and the horses are picking it up. Yeah. It's not quantified, but the heart math thing was interesting. I'd be curious because it seems like way more data.
No, I mean, I think maybe both together. The heart math itself, I think, is great for that because the heart itself has more of an energy field than the brain, actually. So you're tapping into that energy field. It'd be interesting to do both. Now they have more wearable ones. I mean, I'm not sure how much they cost, but like wearable EEGs with dry electrodes. For me, it would take a computer going around and, you know, a cap and stuff like that might be more challenging. Maybe not. You just sit there and the horse would come up to you. But.
Oh, gotcha. So you host retreats that combine this with plant medicine, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell us more how it works?
Yeah, so this was inspiration years ago now, and we're finally doing it, which is really cool. So at our retreats, we do pre and post brain maps. So before when they arrive, they get a brain map. When they leave, they get a brain map. And it can be very validating for people because so many people, especially the Western mind, are such skeptics. Like, this was just in my head, this is a mental experience. But like, no, we saw changes over time. We see changes in neuroplasticity. We see changes in like emotional effect, you know, like depression lifting, anxiety lifting. We've seen changes in head trauma, which I don't think has been published yet. But this is
interesting.
Yeah. So our last retreat, we had a fighter. She got KO'd in a fight a month before. And we saw the head trauma in the brain. But after a week, it was greatly, greatly reduced.
Like ayahuasca reduced her head trauma?
Well, the whole retreat. So it's, most likely, yeah, the ayahuasca, but we're doing all these different things. Ayahuasca, wachuma, and the neurofeedback therapy. But yeah, that reduced her head trauma.
Interesting. Yeah, I got knocked out really bad in the gym last year, and I actually lost my memory for 2 days. And the brain scan, I guess I had a CAT scan or whatever they normally do at the hospital. It didn't show any damage. The only thing that makes, actually the doctor thought I got roofied or something, and that's why I lost my, I was in Mexico and they just do that. GHB is like they'll roofie you and then make you go to the ATM and empty your bank account basically. But I actually think it's because I got rotavirus from my kids. I was on the toilet. I think I was just like super dehydrated. My brain just had no water. So I got hit kind of hard on the head and then lost my memory. But like, I kind of have this feeling like even if I got tapped in the head, I'd probably go out. Like I just have this feeling like my brain is fragile. I don't know if it's psychological or not. I'd be curious. I mean, I'm curious because I'm afraid to spar now, honestly. You know,
we should do a brain map.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so powerful and it's not like a lot of people get afraid like, oh, I have this head trauma. I don't want to see it or want to know about it. But like, well, if you have it, we can work with it.
Yeah.
You know, we can make it, I mean, basically we can make any brain better, any brain more efficient.
Cool.
And whatever's going on with it, we can make it better. So one of the things they first did with neurofeedback, how they discovered it actually, was they trained cats to have the SMR brainwave, a certain brainwave. It's called SMR, sensory motor rhythm. They rewarded them with milk and meat broth.
So basically, if the cat could like make its emotional state more chill, they get rewarded.
Right.
Interesting.
So then they asked the scientists to do another experiment. They want to test the lethal dose of rocket fuel because NASA at the time needed to know like if this rocket fuel got loose in the cabin or people were fueling. They want to know the lethal dose. So at the time, they just, okay, let's take all these cats, put rocket fuel in the chamber, and see what happens. So half these cats like had seizures and died. The other half didn't. It turns out the other half that didn't were trained in this SMR brainwave.
Whoa.
So they found out like this can dramatically increase like resilience.
So it's kind of like a mind over matter thing, or like is it what is like the fight or flight response what kills someone when they're exposed to a toxin sooner?
Well, I think what it is that you're like harnessing the nervous system, making it more powerful, more resilient. So this brainwave, they start training it to like with epilepsy and comas. You know, the first thing they started training this brainwave for. But when your brain, your nervous system becomes more efficient, so I can actually see the brainwaves aligning, becoming, it's like a symphony. So everything starts communicating better. You strengthen those neural networks. When those neural networks are strengthened, what may have disturbed you psychologically before or physically, now you're more robust.
That's really cool. Yeah, I really want to learn about this stuff because it seems like, because like, you know, I've been coaching men for a long time. And one of the conclusions I came up with a while ago is like the most baseline thing a guy needs to work on before he thinks about his relationships or confidence or anything like kind of bigger and abstract is, can you control your stress response? Like, can you not freak out, whether it's when seeing an attractive woman or when stressed by like a conflict with someone? Like that's like the most basic. No information really can help you until you can kind of get your stress response under control. And this seems like a more direct way than like telling guys to take cold showers or something.
Or breathe. And all those things are powerful. I like them. For me, this is why it's so powerful in my life. Because my PTSD was so bad, or my anxiety. And this was the only thing that could really change it. I mean, the plant medicines helped, but this was like the daily practice that like directly could impact my nervous system and calm it down. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's very spiritual too, because like think, oh, we just reduced the nervous system. Like that's just something like, no, like that's a spiritual thing too. If people can live less out of stress response, less out of anxiety, that means they're more them. And that means they can live the life they want. Like that is spiritual. Yeah.
Because even like, you know, you think of like the basic interpersonal conflict that you have, like with a neighbor or a coworker or whomever, your parents or whatever. It's like, the talking only works after someone's calmed down. And if everybody was trained in chilling out, everything just would be better in the world. You know? Huh. Yeah, it's really interesting.
No, that goes a lot into like family dynamics or civilization or society, what it encourages and stuff. But yeah, I mean, when you can like tap into the nervous system and like, okay, operate from a more calm baseline, that's huge. And I think everyone has a stress level in modern society that they don't even realize.
Yeah. And it's different than, you know, given that it's quantifiable, I don't know exactly what the interface is, but you know, it's very easy to spiritually bypass when you've taken a bunch of NVC workshops and you're saying the words, but you can see the person's like got a vein on his forehead, even though he's saying namaste or whatever bullshit, but like actually be able to see, okay, you know.
No, that's very interesting. That's why I love it, because it's very quantifiable. Like for people with trauma, I can see that reducing, including my own, you know, I can see their nervous system calming down. I can see their aligning. But it is interesting when you bring it around spiritual spaces. You know, sometimes I get a great response, and some people are like, "Whoa, you know, what is that?"
Well, it exposes you, I would imagine. Like it shows you really, you know. Yeah. One interesting thing. I actually, have you done the brain mapping while someone's on medicine?
Yeah.
What shows?
So I've published 2 studies. One is on ayahuasca, and the second study was on wachuma. And no one's published any studies on wachuma so far. So I was the first one to publish a study on wachuma, and we pre, during, and post maps. So it all kind of depends on the software and like the mapping system you're looking at. From the software I use and the mapping system I use, we can see kind of emotional states or affect and different ways the body holds trauma. So during that experience, those markers are move in a healthy way. And they continue that way for time after that. So we see so if someone's dealing with like anxiety, depression, there's different ways to measure that. Sometimes those get better. Sometimes they may look like they're getting worse, but I think that what it is actually just emotional processing going on. But say like if they have a busy mind that's too busy, that might calm down. Or say if their system's underpowered, needs more, it'll like bring it up. So it really seems to adapt to whatever they need. What we've noticed.
Yeah, because as you are too. I mean, we know a lot of people who've done medicine and maybe done too much or something, and you know, and I've seen. I know enough people. I have enough friends who maybe I feel misinterpreted what they were seeing, or maybe their trauma was so heavy that they were seeing images in their plant medicine ceremony that wasn't exactly, you know, isn't really conducive to their health. Or like, you know, I had a friend who, you know, she kind of had a bad breakup. She sat in ayahuasca, and then she saw these images that like her ex was like Hitler, and she went on this war path. He's like, he was kind of a dick, but like you're a little going too far. And I wonder if something more quantifiable like this could show her like, okay, you went really deep into your pain here. This is not reality. This is not, I don't know. I wonder.
Well, I mean, I think one thing is that shamanism is such a foreign thing to Westerners and plant medicines. No shaman takes every vision they have as like the end all be all, and that's like the concrete truth. Like they'll discuss with each other and they have insight into it. And it's just like dreams, right?
Yeah.
I mean, your dreams might be exposing your own fears, your own subconscious processes. So I think that the modern way people deal with shamanism, they come down, they have this experience, and they leave. They're missing like the construct around it. I think that needs to be emphasized more, because when I have a ceremony, I might have like crazy visions, and I think I know everything at that moment. I've learned the hard way, like wait a couple weeks before you do anything.
Yeah.
You know, like I have this thing to hash out with this person, and you know, I'm like, okay, just calm down. You know, just be in your process and work through
My second ayahuasca ceremony, I happened to watch The Vice Guide to Liberia, right? Like maybe 3 days before, where you know they do a documentary about like the warlords were eating children and all this like really gnarly stuff, and like the guy's describing how he would like sacrifice a child, like all this really really gnarly stuff on top of rape and all of this stuff. And then I sat in ayahuasca ceremony, and for the entire 8 hours or whatever, I felt like I was the one doing all these terrible things. I was like, oh my God, why did I eat all those children? Like, and I was seeing it so vividly, and I was like, oh my God, like, and you know, from maybe a superficial view, it's like, okay, I shouldn't have watched that shit before going, you know, taking medicine essentially.
Well, I mean, it really shows you medicines emphasize what's real anyway. So I think that emphasizes the nature of consciousness and how precious consciousness is and what we choose to absorb. I mean, day to day, we don't think about that much, but all of a sudden it matters when you're in space. It matters all the time, you know? So like realizing like anything you put in your consciousness, that's part of you now.
Yeah. Actually, you might find this interesting. So when I lost my memory came back out of order. It came back in terms of emotional weight. Like I couldn't remember what country we were in. I couldn't remember anything from the past 7 months. But I had like anything emotional from my life felt like it just happened, like yesterday. And I had to like figure out, okay, I was this age, so that didn't happen before this. I had to kind of piece it together. But one other thing was that I couldn't differentiate my life from fiction. Like if even I was reading this book about like murder in Jamaica. I mean, I guess it's just what I consume. And like even though I read it, like it was all in my head, I was mixing up the memories from this book I was reading with my real life. And like, you know, there was an MMA fighter who had just committed suicide who I used to follow. And I was really like sad about it. And I was like, do I know her? Like it felt like, was I at her funeral? Like I never met her before. I've seen her fight a few times. All of these things, like anything emotional felt like it just happened to me. Right. Even stuff that I watched on TV. It was really, it was really wild.
Yeah, and emotion is more real than like facts.
Yeah.
To the mind and
to the subconscious. Yeah. Cool, man. So where can people find out about your work?
Yeah, so I have website Tiwa's Awakening. That's our retreat website.
Oh yeah, hold on. Tiwa's, that's what, a Nordic shamanism thing?
So we are into the Germanic traditions, the Northern European traditions. So Tiwa's is the rune for the warrior. So our retreats have a warrior-esque quality to them, and the noble warrior, not just violence, you know, that noble centeredness, and that's a Tiwa's rune. So in our retreats, we do jiu-jitsu, we do boxing, archery, and we do the brain mapping, and we go on some adventure hikes and then plant medicines. And then Neuroenlightenment is my website for the brain training. And you know, if anyone's interested in like neurofeedback, if you don't have to come to a retreat necessarily, we can remote train anyone in the world. So
cool. They just need to buy the headset.
Yeah, they buy the equipment.
Okay.
And it's like a home train unit, a small amp, as we call it.
Cool.
We send it to them, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And the Germanic shamanism you got into because that's your ethnic root?
Yeah, no, it's my it's my ethnic background. And after my first ayahuasca ceremony, I'm like, wait, we had our own shamans too. And it's worth exploring our own traditions as well. I mean, I love exploring all traditions, but we have our own traditions too, which I like.
Yeah. Actually, because I had a short-lived. It's still it's up. I was trying to cover the history of masculinity, so I was going to do an episode on Wotan. Okay. Because you know it's who eventually became Odin. There's a lot of evidence that he was a real person. That just became deified. People kept telling stories about this chieftain with one eye, and then he eventually became a god. But he was just a real dude that led what eventually became the Nordic people. Or a Germanic tribe. I might be mixing it up, but they came from the Caucasus region. Caucasus. I forget if I'm saying it wrong. Anyway, he just happened to lead them into Northern Europe, and then they created this whole mythology around him, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, cool, man. We'll add links to all your offerings. I definitely want to check out the brain mapping stuff and play around with that whenever you have time.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.
All right, thank you.